Welcome to Get Real, How to Live a More Authentic Life, with psychologist and author of over 75 books, Dr. Barry Weinhold.
Welcome back, everyone, to Get Real, How to Live a More Authentic Life with Dr. Barry Weinhold. My name is Ashley Ross. Dr. Weinhold, how are you today?
I'm grateful as usual.
Wonderful. Anything special this week?
No, I still think I'm in the winter doldrums a bit. I can't engage in one of the most fun things in my life, and that's fly fishing. I'm not an ice fisherman, so I'm not going to go there.
So it's definitely a different experience. Not anything close to it.
Have you been ice fishing?
I have. It was not fun.
It wasn't fun.
No. Although I was very small at the time, so having the patience to stare at a hole in the ice for hours on end.
Never appealed to me.
No, and I think the best part about fishing for me, because I don't really enjoy fishing anyways, is just being on the water in the sun. None of those things happen in the winter.
That's half the enjoyment for me now too. Is I've found this unbelievably beautiful mountain lake I fish at, and just being there in the sunshine, watching the birds fly by and hearing all the bird noises and seeing the views is enough. If I catch fish, great. If I don't, okay. But the other thing that I enjoy the most is live music. And I've been able to catch up on some of that this winter, and that's about the only thing that's keeping me going with fun things. One of my favorite local groups, I'm a groupie now, I even have the t-shirt, is called Colorado Floyd.
Oh.
And they have the Pink Floyd sound down perfectly. And they just jam with Pink Floyd type music. And so they're coming back next month to my favorite music venue. And I'm ready to get tickets. I'm going to be going to that. That'll brighten my spirits a lot.
Most definitely.
I must have seen them maybe 6 times.
Oh, wow.
So I'm a groupie.
You are a groupie.
And I said I have the Colorado Floyd t-shirt to wear. And but it's just, I mean, they're local musicians, but I've been a Pink Floyd fan musically and for a long time, but never got to see them in person.
No.
I have a lot of their albums and everything, but never saw them in person.
Yeah, there are quite a few of the greats that we're now no longer able to see, which is really sad. Really sad.
Yeah, I actually saw Tony Bennett in his last concert. Oh no, I'm sorry, it wasn't Tony Bennett. It was Neil Diamond.
Oh.
and that after that concert, he stopped performing in concert. He got Parkinson's.
Oh no.
So he can't perform anymore.
No.
But the concert he did, saw it up in Denver, was unbelievable. I've never seen a concert that good. He just really knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, man, I do love a good concert. They know what they're doing, that's for sure. It's wonderful.
I saw Tony Bennett when he was first getting started back in my hometown when he was 17 years old.
Oh man. That would be very cool to have that as a little memory. Because all the greats. So what do we have going on this week?
Well, the title of this one is Parenting Using a Rearview Mirror. And unfortunately, I'm afraid that most parents do this without being aware of it. And I can't fault them on that, because basically when we were growing up, regardless of whether we knew it or not, we were taking copious notes about watching what our parents were doing. And we stored that in our default setting, our natural default setting, as the way to parent our children when we grow up and become parents. Unfortunately, what happens is that if we don't know how certain things that they did to us affected us, we maybe had some feelings that we didn't like what they were doing, but we didn't have a full understanding of it. We will repeat those things with our current families, and so it's really again the two skills: self uh, reflection and self correction are what you need to do if you're a parent. And unfortunately, in the heat of battle, you find yourself saying and doing the same things that were said and done to you. Did you ever have that happen to you?
Oh, many times.
Well, share
Unfortunately.
a couple to help us understand how that happens.
The one of the big ones I've been noticing a lot now lately is um the like if my kid hurts himself, I tell him to, oh, you're fine, suck it up, you're fine, brush yourself off, you're okay, everything's fine. And now that he's 8, I see him like he's very clumsy and he'll hurt himself. He's like, "Ah, that didn't hurt." I'm like, "Oh no, that's really not like I want him to understand that he's perfectly fine to have, an emotional reaction or we all feel pain and that's okay and there's, ways that we can get through that. It's not something that you should just bottle up and be like, "Yeah, I'm fine. Like I'm a man, just suck it up." And I really didn't intend that one at all, but it happened.
Well, it's important when you mention that one. It reminds me of when I go through those 4 steps I did last week about in the episode about what you can do to change your belief systems and change your life. Actually, is that one of the things that's often missing, that is why it keeps coming back, is that people did not get comforted when they had something happen that was scary to them. And so it's really important for parents to know that. And that if the kid falls down and he's a little scared about that he might have hurt himself, is he needs comfort. Some kind of, mm, maybe it's a hug or holding them or saying comforting things to them, but not taking away their feelings, not saying, oh, don't feel anything, it's going to be okay. But say, it must hurt, and you must really be scared right now that when you fell hurt yourself. And I'm here to comfort you. Come, let me give you a hug, or come up here and sit in my lap, or something that comforts the person. And when I was looking at trauma, I looked at the fact that the difference between a trauma and an owie was just that. If people had what could be called a trauma in their life, and there was somebody there to comfort them, it was no longer a trauma. It was just an owie, and was recorded in their body memory as an owie, not as a trauma. So that's huge for parents to remember, that every time something happens and your child gets scared about something, they just need some comfort. And of course, I talked about this too, about the dangers of using time out. That you have to, when people are emotionally upset and hurt, you don't send them off to be by themselves, because they don't know they don't have the skills yet to re-regulate themselves. The most effective thing you can do is have them either sit in your lap or sit in a chair next to you until they calm down, and to feed off your energy as you talk to them in a calm voice, and you give them some reassurance that they're not a bad person because they have a temper tantrum, but they just are frustrated about something. You understand their feelings. That makes it just an owie. But if you send them to your room to cry it out, or figure out why you had a temper tantrum. They can't do that, but they can cry it out, and often they're left there to cry themselves to sleep. That's the worst thing you can do to a child, because then they fall into the black hole, and and for a child to fall into the black hole, it's the closest thing to death, because children need connection to survive. We know that. And so if you deprive them of connection, they get afraid that they're not going to survive, which is a natural kind of feeling they would have in that situation. So, I mean, I have one client now who I'm convinced that the source of his problems is that he was allowed to cry himself to sleep. And I have another client who's has, similar problems, and he knows his mother told him that they left him cry himself to sleep, and they thought it was a good thing. And so again, it's parenting in the rearview mirror. Probably that parent of that child probably had something like that happen to them, and they didn't register how awful that felt. And so, I mean, when a parent does something and they register that it's awful to your children, they will do what is necessary is to come and say, I'm really sorry I did that or said that to you. I see that it hurt your feelings, and I'll really work really hard to not do that again. And to give them some sense of comfort at that point, rather than criticism or some kind of punishment by sending them off to their room. So those are all kinds of things that are really what I call parenting using our rearview mirrors, because it's what we didn't quite understand. We saw our parents doing these things, but we didn't quite understand, well, first of all, why they were doing it, and second of all, the effect it was having on us. And if that's true, we are 100% destined to repeat it. It will just happen again, because it's again something wasn't finished, wasn't complete. As a parent, anything that floats around in your subconscious or unconscious that isn't complete is going to show up, and it often shows up in the heat of battle. I mean, I had that happen to me. I mean, uh, my parents said and did things to me that I swore I would never do to my children, and there I was doing it almost word for word to my children in the heat of battle, and that was pretty shocking to me when I saw myself doing that, and forced me to really take a deeper look at what else am I using my rearview mirror to parent with. So, have you had those kind of experiences too?
Oh, definitely. And I think it's kind of creating more and more awareness. The more I dig into my own past, I notice what I've been parenting with. And I also notice kind of the things that, uh, again, what the root causes were for a lot of those things. And again, I was told the same thing. So I've seen this with my son as well. He's very emotional, as am I. And I was told again, just suck it up, even though I was a girl, and that's a little bit more normal for girls to be
Yeah,
emotional. Um, I would tell my son, I would criticize him anytime, he got overly upset and, had a fit about something. Um, I would, as you said, I would say, stop it or calm him down. And yeah, that's a big one that now I've really been trying to just talk with him and say, it is okay. And, I've made a mistake. I'm sorry. I'm
yeah,
learning how to be a parent, and I'll do better next time, or,
yeah,
I
yeah. Right. I mean,
apologize.
it's important also to let your children know that you aren't perfect, and
Mhm.
you recognize that, and
Yeah.
are able to say, "I'm sorry, I made a mistake here." That's huge in parenting, because that allows the parent or the child to get over the myth that you are all perfect about everything you do, and I'm not. And so it gives them permission to also make mistakes and not get all bent around the axle about making a mistake in front of parents who never
That's another big one that I've noticed.
is it.
Yeah,
Oh,
I transferred my people pleasing and perfectionism onto him, so we're working on that one too.
okay. Well, I mean, I always say our children are our greatest teachers if we let them teach us.
Mhm,
They have, they have most children will tell you what's going on with them,
mhm,
and so you can then look at that and say, oh well, that's something I need to learn. I
mhm,
need to learn how to handle that in a different way than it was handled when I was a child. And that's how you begin to change those behaviors as a parent.
mhm.
So take copious notes as a parent. Your children are teaching you every day things you need to know. So yeah, and I had a lot of time to think about that as I've grown up, and I've seen. I mean, the one that affected me, it isn't necessarily affecting my parenting. Well, maybe it does. Uh, is that when they punished me as a child, they would say, "Well, uh, this what you're doing is bad," and what would the neighbors think of you if they knew about this? And that was always a kind of a well, I later saw that was a way of controlling my behavior even more by thinking the neighbors would be watching me too, and I'd have to be on my best behavior around them. And but the lasting effect about of that was that I I always was concerned about what the neighbors thought as an adult. And my wife, who grew up on a farm where she didn't even have any neighbors, thought that was just silly. And she was right. It was silly, but I kept doing it. And so she pointed out very often when I would when that program would show up of well, I do something to kind of make sure the neighbor that closes shades to make sure the neighbors aren't watching or just dumb things that were all the result of that kind of message from my parents.
Funnily enough, my husband closes the curtains when he does yoga, and I asked him and I challenged him. I'm like, "Why? Why do you do that? Is it because you're embarrassed that you're doing yoga and you're worried that people are gonna see you? Like, what is that thing?" So maybe that's something he has acquired over the
He,
years as well.
he got that message too. What would the neighbors think of you?
I'll have to ask him.
At one point, I even had the thought of what if I went over and asked them what they thought of me? Wouldn't that be something? I
They'd
did not.
probably give you a very quizzical look like, I don't know."
Yeah, right. I never got mustered up the courage to do that, but I thought about it.
They probably think you're great, you know? It's probably what it was. Most of the time, it's way worse than we make out to be in our heads, I
It
think.
is, yeah, right. And I had another incident that was sort of illustrative for me. My I must have been maybe 8, somewhere in that age, 7, 8. Maybe I might have been a little, I don't remember, but somewhere in that age. And my parents were invited out to dinner, and they invited me too. So I felt really honored that I was considered now a part of the adult world to be invited out to dinner at these people's place with my parents. And of course, I finished my meal with them, and they wanted to talk adult talk, you know, how's so and so, and how's your business doing, and I wasn't interested in any of that, and so I got up and left the table, and my mother said, "Oh, Barry, you can't do that. You have to you have to ask permission to do that. You have to say, excuse me, I would like to leave the table and get the permission of everybody." And I looked at her with this puzzled look, and I said, "Well, I never heard of that one before." And my parents were so embarrassed, and their friends thought it was really cute, but they didn't at all. It sort of reflected on their parenting, and anything that reflected negatively on their parenting, they weren't going to be pleased about for sure. I found that out. So when I got home, I got chewed out about that one. You know, no, I mean, there's a lot of the kinds of things that happen to us as a child that we don't understand why adults act the way they do. We're living in our child world, and some of that is some innocence, which is important to have a childhood where that you're able to retain some of your innocence and your ability to look at the world from well, what I would call now a get real perspective. Children are pretty real, and they tell it like it is. Parents don't like that because parents aren't real anymore. They've given up that realness somehow, and they think they're in a role as parent, and as that in a role as a parent, they have to do and say things that they maybe sometimes they don't even believe, and so kids will bust your your role expectations by being totally honest with what they see. So that's again an opportunity for a parent to learn something from their children. And so I guess that's about enough. Do you have anything else you wanted to add on this topic? I mean, it's certainly
No,
uh,
I
an
I think
important
you
one because I think
yeah.
all of us as parents, if we're a parent, we're challenged by this. But how how can I parent in a different way than I was parented? And my concluding remark is you first have to know how that affected you. And if you didn't quite get it, you're likely to repeat it. And if you saw it was negative, why would you say it again? Or why would you do it again? The only reason is that you didn't know the full effect of it. You didn't let it
Mhm.
in. You kind of distracted yourself when it happened,
Mhm.
or you didn't allow the full effect of it to take effect. It may have been too hard for a
Mhm.
young child to experience the full effect.
And like you said, we put on the blinders and we live in that, tunnel vision world sometimes out of survival. But we forget, the brain either um, maybe doesn't bring it up as often for a while until enough of it builds up. Then we start seeing, like you said, as a parent, you start seeing the similarities and you see those scenes coming up again because of course, you're gonna just verbalize, like you said, in the heat of battle, whatever you learned as a
Yeah,
child.
whatever was in your default
Mhm.
setting.
Yeah. So it really brings it front and center. And like you said, it's an opportunity. A lot of us, some people aren't quite there yet, and or might not be aware of it. They find that to be an embarrassment or frustration. But I feel like it's just an opportunity to become a better parent
Yeah.
myself.
Well, there's a guy by the name of James Dobson, a psychologist. He writes a lot of books about children and child development. And I read the books and I'm agreeing with that. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. I agree with that. Yeah. And then he comes to a point and he has a twist. And the twist is that children are dangerous to adults and you have to break their will or they will take over your life.
That's an interesting one.
And he was head of Focus on the Family, which is an organization housed here in Colorado Springs. And I thought, oh my God, that's the most
Wow.
awful thing. I wonder what his childhood was like. Wonder what rearview mirror he was looking at when he wrote that.
Definitely.
Yeah,
I think that's a old school.
yeah.
uh,
I mean,
uh,
he actually wrote a book called the Strong-Willed Child, and with instructions of how to break the will of your strong-willed child, so that by age 2 they don't take over the whole family.
oh wow. Yeah, that one wouldn't be for me.
No,
I
it
would have to
wasn't
say.
for me, and yet millions of people bought his books.
I'm sure. Is it even in my generation? It's still talked about that way. It's changing. I would say continuing generations below me is definitely changing, but unfortunately, there's still a lot of those beliefs that kids are meant to be controlled and not
Yeah.
cherished and treated like human beings.
I
So,
mean, we're improving if you look at the history of childhood and
mhm,
how people in the Middle Ages treated their children and later on. And we certainly have improved on how we treat our children, but we still have a long way to go.
definitely, most
All right,
definitely.
that's about all I need to say about this topic today.
Well, thank you so
Thanks for
much.
giving me some of your examples and validating what I'm saying. I appreciate that.
Of course, I always enjoy talking about parenting, especially with you, Dr. Weinhold. It brings great insights and also helps me do my self-reflection phase. So it's
Great.
wonderful. Well, until next month, I
All
hope
right.
you have a wonderful day.
Yeah, you too. And well, it'll just be next week.
That's true. That's very true. And we hope everyone has enjoyed the beginning of the new year. And thank you so much for tuning in.
Right. Thank you everyone for watching or listening. And I hope and if you have comments or questions, please, there's a place on the I believe on the YouTube site, maybe on the Spotify site to ask questions or make comments.
Most definitely.
Okay.
Please
Love to
do.
hear from you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Weinhold.
Right. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
For more information, please visit the Colorado Institute for Conflict Resolution and Creative Leadership at CICRCL.org or click the link in the show notes.